Verses 4 to 7 tell us that God is with us. And this next section begins with a surprise. We continue to hear the sound of water, but instead of the chaotic, destructive sound of the waters of verse 3, we hear life-giving, joy-giving waters instead in verse 4. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. Now here in verse 4, with God, the waters are no longer a menacing sight like the raging seas, but they are life-giving rivers. In creation, God subdued the chaotic waters and turned them into life-giving waters. You can read about that in Psalm 104, verses 6 to 9. Now, the river here is a bit of theological geography, as opposed to actual geography. The psalmist doesn't want us to get a map out and look at the city of Jerusalem and where the rivers are. There's no colouring in here to be done on a geography project. It's a poetry of the psalm, giving us a picture of God's help, because he is with us. Like water supplying a besieged city, God is the source of peace and blessings. Why? Well, look at verse 5. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. God is in his city. God is with us. So verse 5 gives us the promise that she shall not be moved, she will not fall, comparing to the mountains just before that have fallen into the heart of the sea. The impressive strength of God being with us is stronger than what's gone on before. And verse 5 also says that God will help her at the break of day, which echoes the greatest deliverance, when God rescued his people out of Egypt, and they were there at the waters, and Moses stretched out his hand, and the Red Sea turned back to engulf the armies of Egypt at the break of day. God's help at just the right time. So in this psalm, the security of the city is not down to its own strength, but is due to its chief resident, God, who is within her. Where do we draw our security and peace from at times like these? Well, it needs to come from the indwelling presence of God. And again, for Christians, we know that it is Jesus who's come and dwelt among us. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth, John 1 tells us. And Jesus promises to be with us always, even to the very end of the age. And the Father and the Son send us the Spirit of truth, the Counselor who dwells within us. So we can say, along with the psalmist, verse 7, the Lord Almighty is with us. Against the backdrop of catastrophe and disaster, the psalmist tells us what it means to know God, that God is with us. Where there's instability and insecurity all around, where do you find your peace, your security? It's to come from God who is with us, the God who will never leave us or forsake us. Selah, think about this.